Hello and welcome to our very last section in this ecology unit. We're going to look at a couple of different questions in this section. How do humans depend on ecosystems? And what are some of the effects that human populations have on different ecosystems? So let's take a look at that. So we know that terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems provide natural resources that are essential for human existence. That's one way that humans depend on ecosystems. Here are just some pictures of examples. Forests and woodlands are sources of wood, fuel, paper, wild game. Grasslands are grazed by domestic animals, give us food, leather, wool. Coastal oceans are harvested for fish. And people don't just harvest materials from ecosystems, they also actively change ecosystems in certain areas to create areas where the yield is increased for specific resources. Examples of that would be forests and grasslands that have been converted to croplands, because that provides actually most of our food, beverages, oil, raw materials for fabrics, things like that. So these are some ways that humans are very dependent on ecosystems. What is a common pool resource? Common pool resources are shared by many, but not controlled by anyone. Those are the kinds of resources that examples would be coastal or open fisheries, federal grasslands that are grazed by privately owned livestock, groundwater that can be drawn by private owners or towns, forests or woodlands that in developing countries. Our entire atmosphere is a common pool resource. Sometimes it's just called commons. There is often little or no regulation of access to commons, so it is often exploited. We know that our atmosphere is very polluted by both large industries and by individuals. So those are just some types of resources that humans use. So the goods that ecosystems provide for humans is only part of the picture. A really big part of the picture is that ecosystems provide energy flow and nutrient cycling, and those definitely support human life. We're going to look at 4 of those aspects. The first one, ecosystems modify climate. An example of that would just be the fact that plants transpire water, contributing to the water cycling. They absorb solar radiation, and so as a result, vegetated ecosystems like forests, wetlands, they help maintain a stable climate. Another important aspect to ecosystems, they prevent erosion and they build soil. Those are really important aspects. Plant roots bind the soil and they prevent rainfall from breaking up the soil and washing it away. Most of the soil that supports farming gained its fertility when the land was covered with forests and grasslands. And so the soil is a very important part of ecosystems. Ecosystems break down wastes. That's a very important job. Here is a picture showing actinomycetes breaking down dead plants. Ecosystems decompose organic wastes even, not just plants. They decompose domestic or agricultural wastes that are released into different ecosystems, especially wetlands. And they, in doing so, purify our water and our air. Ecosystems also store carbon and maintain the carbon cycle. Without this global energy flow and the maintenance of the carbon cycle worldwide, we would have very severe and rapid global warming. So in addition to all of these points we've just mentioned, ecosystems provide a lot of other benefits, serve many other functions. They control pests. They maintain biodiversity. They maintain all of the different nutrient cycles, not just carbon. They maintain the water cycle. These are all very, very critical functions that ecosystems serve. So we're all aware that human population growth dramatically affects our ecosystems. You all have seen this exponential curve in this exponential growth model here. And you know that the beginning of a logistic curve is just like this. And at some point, populations reach carrying capacity, and that curve will level off into a logistic curve. So what is the Earth's carrying capacity? How much human population can it support? And how is this dramatic increase in human population currently affecting our biosphere? So one of the most impactful effects that humans have had on the biosphere is land use. Land use is something that has dramatically affected different ecosystems. One of the most disruptive activities humans actually have on ecosystems is agriculture. It dramatically changes ecosystems. We use about 11% of our land surface for agricultural crops. We've also converted about 7% of that to of our land to pastures, about 4% cities, towns, roads. So there's an estimated 22% roughly of the land surface is devoted exclusively to human use. Obviously, loss of species is unprecedented due to this. So you can see that there are many effects to ecosystems by simply our land use. Another huge impact that human population growth has had on our ecosystems would be pollution. Two forms of air pollution. We'll look at the first one, CFCs. And CFCs stands for chlorofluorocarbons. And from chemistry, it's a carbon. It has chlorine atoms and fluorine usually attached to it. And the reason those are so damaging is that these chlorine atoms, when they react in the atmosphere, they act as catalysts for the degradation of ozone. And you all know that we don't want ozone down here where we are, but ozone is really critical up higher in the atmosphere where it absorbs the solar radiation and the ultraviolet radiation that is very damaging to life on Earth. And so it's very important up here. And when these chlorofluorocarbons are released into that layer, that ozone layer, those chlorine atoms, those individual atoms, break off of these CFC molecules, and they act as catalysts. And what's so alarming about them is that you have this chlorine atom that then breaks down the ozone molecule, and that ozone molecule then becomes oxygen, O2 oxygen, or just oxygen that combines with the chlorine atom. And then that chlorine atom breaks off and is used again and again and again. Remember, a catalyst is something that speeds up a reaction, facilitates a chemical reaction, and it's not used up in the process. So you end up having this chlorine that continues to be used and then reused and reused, and breaks down all of that wonderful protective ozone that we have. So the other kind of air pollution that currently affects the biosphere and is caused by humans would be excessive greenhouse gases. When we talk about the greenhouse effect, it's because if you think of a greenhouse, greenhouse gases trap infrared radiation in the atmosphere and cause the atmospheric temperatures to rise, stimulating this greenhouse type of effect where you have it warmer down here. And the greenhouse effect is actually very beneficial. Without it, we would not be able to sustain the kind of life that we do on Earth. However, excessive greenhouse gases cause a problem. And when we have too much of that, the Earth then gets too warm. And we all know burning fossil fuels contributes to those greenhouse gases and contributes to a degree that there is a huge concern that we are raising the temperature too much and causing a shift in climate and climate change, and that will definitely have impact on all of the ecosystems in our biosphere. Another way we affect the biosphere is acid rain. Pollutants such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, they rise into the atmosphere and alter the pH of the precipitation. It changes the pH of that water cycle and that process. And obviously, life is very sensitive to pH. Remember, if pH is too acidic or too basic, life does not do well. There's a very, very narrow range that organisms flourish, in which they flourish in terms of pH. So altering the pH and making more acidic would be raising the pH to make it more acidic, has dramatic effects on ecosystems in our planet. So that brings us to the term that everyone's very familiar with, sustainability. The human species has obviously been incredibly successful in spreading over the earth and using goods provided by our Earth's ecosystems. However, a lot of the things that humans do are not sustainable. That is, they cannot continue at their present rate without very serious, undesirable consequences. So, obviously, we need to be responsible in looking at how sustainability, some way of thinking how we can continue without posing these serious undesirable consequences, without using the Earth's resources at the rates that we are using some of them at and looking at renewable resources and different ways that obviously we can create sustainability and continue to live and not drain the entire planet of all of its wonderful, vast, and diverse resources. So main points to take away: how our ecosystems, what do they provide? How are we dependent on them as human beings? What are the natural resources that they give to us? How do they support human life as well as other life? What are these different things functions that they serve, modifying climate, preventing erosion, building soil, breaking down waste, maintaining nutrient cycles, biodiversity? What is the human impact on the ecosystems in reverse then? Land use, pollution, acid rain, etc. How do human beings alter some of the abiotic factors within the ecosystems? And how do those abiotic changes that human population growth has caused, how does that affect different biotic elements in our ecosystems and in our biosphere? So those are some things to think about. And some little extra things, extra ideas, advanced. And if you have other advanced ideas, please come in, show me. I look forward to seeing you in class.